I want to talk about Shin Buddhism as originated by Shinran for the sake of discussion, and Zen by Dogen or Rinzai. Two of them look quite opposite with each other on appearance because Shin Buddhism seems to be more compassionate and Zen is more intellectual. Or you can call it compassion and wisdom, warm heart and sharp brain. But I see the commonality, and somehow I feel I can relate to both of them. Maybe this is influenced by Daisuke Suzuki, who was a professor at the university related to Shin Buddhism, but he's very famous of his literature and speeches and so forth in Zen as Zen scholar. It's not a scholar, I believe. He's, if you may call it, awakened, enlightened. But maybe because of that person's influence, I'm so attracted to Myokonin in Shin Buddhism. And I have posted various videos, but this video is my trial to see if we can see the commonality between those two religions or spirituality. If I look at my whole being, and there's also a Japanese saying that there's a chijoi, which is intellect, emotion, and willpower. Intellect more brain, and emotion more heart, perhaps, or intellect related to wisdom, and emotion more related to compassion. Or each of them have negativity if we stretch out too much intellect without considering the heart, and there could be a problem, and I feel it, as much as if you put too much emotion without much intellect, there could be a difficulty raised. But the pure spirituality that I see is quite profound for each of them, for both of them. And what I want to talk is what is the core, the essence of it. All the varieties we see may be rooted to some origin. And I share that with the analogy of tree. As much as the energy from the root may be spread out to branches and leaves and develop different way to express. And that could be the case for this discussion of the Shin Buddhism related to emotion, and the other being Zen related more to intellectual wisdom. But the root, to me, if I were to choose one word, could be emptiness, or the source of, or the core of who we are, the living being. In the other video, I mentioned about the analogy of the tree to our evolutionary process. The core is like an origin of life. The law of nature found a way to connect all the atoms and develop the living being, and then it spread out to different branches, and humanity is one of them. But all the living beings may go back to the root and find that there are certain protein, amino acid, whatever the term, I understood that some scientists figure out that happened like 3-4 billion years ago on Earth. And before that, there's no sign of life because I believe, you may have to check on this, but the nitrogen is difficult to get into ways so that the protein or the source of the molecular uh, structure can only be found like 3-4 billion years ago, according to some scientist study. I may post it on the description, but the point is that the simple term is the law of nature provided us this opportunity to be born, and whatever the history, a million years or billion even, we found a way to be here and even communicate with each other with words. I believe this is the miracle of the miracle. I'm amazed to it. So if that's the source of wisdom and compassion, how would that relate to Shin Buddhism and Zen Buddhism? I can see a few examples. Like in Shin Buddhism, there's a case of myokonin. There are many of them in Japan, but the Saichi or Shoma are the ones that I can relate to. Maybe give you an example. I think it was Saichi's case when he was young. He had some trouble and caught by police because he was betting some money or some gamble issue. And that hit him, and he didn't like what he has done. Eventually he found Shin Buddhism as a savior because he himself couldn't get out of the cage, so to speak, of this sense of sin and how he felt as human. But Amida's vow, as described by Shinran in Shin Buddhism, point that there's a way out. The symbolic image of that is the boat, huge boat that can carry you. So there's a story of the palm of the Buddha, and you're sitting on it. There are many stories like that, but it's kind of like that we humans have limitation, but Amida Buddha, the compassion, will bring out the Savior, somewhat similar to Christianity, but to the point that even the sinners will be saved by saying, or in belief of Amida Buddha. The chanting word is Namo Amida Butsu. Shinran says it's just one thought is good enough, so that all the delusion, instead of you trying to erase and come out clean as the way you are, Amida's compassion would resolve that problem. So by praying for Amida Buddha, you will be saved. And maybe because of the view of those myokonin especially, because it's not so much of a dogma or teaching with thick sutras and so forth. It's just one belief, Namo Amida Butsu. And in my view, when you utter that Namo Amida Butsu word, to believe that Amida would take over your ego or whatever the flaws, but as you are, just like parents would have compassion. No questions asked. That's my word. But you'll be saved. This is far-fetched and many people may not believe. Even in Shin Buddhism, the number may be very high. Because it's unbelievable. But those myokonin, maybe due to their sense of a deep, regretful sense of their being, there's no way out. And that drove them to believe, to empty them out, meaning that no mind can solve it. Mind can structure, use logic, saying this way and that way. It's kind of like a linear logic. As you do some A, B, C, and X, Y, Z, there's still an N of V, W, X, or whatever the other branches may come back, and you may not clean up the whole equation in intellect. So compassion is like a kid's being loved by parents. Amida's Buddha, you let go of yourself for Amida's vote to help you to believe that. That's the moment of, if you call it, awakening. There's a special term called the Shin Jinketsujo. That's the meaning in Japanese. In English, it is Shinjin, the mind that would believe, would decisive that you will be saved. Shinjin. And the Shinjin doesn't have the logical construct except to believe in Amida's vow to save you. But the mind may get into the way not to believe it. That's like a Zen, there's always a hurdle, and more often than not, if not all, it is the hurdle within our mind. Our mind can create any image, like any software. You can do anything you want and play with it. And we can become the victim of that own creation or adoption of software in our mind and keep repeating like watching the movie endlessly, because that's the programming of the logic, and the neural network we have can adapt to that, and that's how our brain may be developed as additional tools that we play, but we may not be able to find the operations manual or how to use it, so we get into trouble. Basically, in few words, I mentioned this before, dualistic view of comparing A to B, X to Y, and use the logic. That's the dualism that is played with in our mind, may have a limit. That's why I say use the brain, not to be used by the brain, but listen to your heart, the origin of where you are from. So when you bridge the gap or connect to the source of who you are, Shin Buddhism, the Myokonin, prayer, Nama Amida Butsu, believing Amida will save, can happen. So that's the Shin Buddhism. If I contrast to Zen and Dogen's practice, for example, in my case, I had experiences of Vipassana, which is similar to Dogen meditation. I'm not going to go into detail, but the basic point is to see everything as it is. Not cook in your mind what's going on, but let the mind to be on its own and not to deal with it. So as much as in Shin Buddhism, when the mind is calm and quiet, and instead of belief, in Zen, it is just the awareness of being in each moment. Then you have awakening experience, as I had 23 years ago in the year 2000, which is that you cannot explain what happened because it's not something happened in your brain, but the brain root is now found the connection to where we came from. It is as if we are to find the core of our being And then the whole energy, like I used the tree analogy, that the blockage is gone, that the energy connection is there, and therefore the life energy flows more smoothly, and you find the happiness. So instead of Amida Buddha, this is just the pure observation to realize what's happening. And that's basically the idea of Zen. I can talk about the Rinzai Zen and koan, but I'm not going to go into it. But the basic principle is to go beyond the paradox of brain and heart. The limitation of the brain and the mind is realized. And when you start to find the connection to the root, as in the Shin, the Zen also have this awakening experience. And that's how I see those two similar or identical at the source. My words are limited using the human logic, but that's part of the puzzle. I want me keep on addressing and connecting to the root, as much as when I do that, lots of interesting wisdom or compassion, realization pops up. And I like to keep on sharing to see there's perhaps some scientific logic someone may eventually figure out, or like this compassionate emotional factor that we may relate to bridge the gap. And therefore, the end result, well, actually, the result is the process of living, would be to have that connection and live accordingly and be happy in what you do, and hopefully whole humanity may have some realization of awakening that can happen. I see the connection to AI, but this is not the time and place to talk about it. I mentioned in various videos about it, but I thought that this is the end of 2023, last day. I don't know why I thought about sharing this, but even if there's a difficulty of explaining or digesting or understanding or practicing, there may be some people watching this possibly find it interesting and pursue whatever may mean meaningful to live your